Hello guys, this is Shawn Kwon from Korea, and today we are going to talk about is investing at quantum computing on recession is a good idea or not? My subtitle is The Future of Quantum Computing and Which Company Will Survive. And as you already know, my English video hasn't been produced since last fall, I think. This is because I don't have enough time or I couldn't get someone who could translate my PowerPoint slides. So I'm still working on getting help. If the things are sorted out, I'll let you guys know. Okay, so are quantum technology companies immune to recession? This report is actually from a media called Quantum Computing Reports. So if you'd like to read the original script, you could check out the website and read the report yourself. So a recession is raising questions about the world of quantum technology. Are quantum technologies immune to wider spread economic downturns, or at least can it stand despite of the supply chain problems and wars? If there is immunity, what factors make this possible? How should we prepare if quantum technologies are the same as other tech companies that have taken a sudden downturn? So these are all good questions, right? And the media asked some quantum tech experts about it. Of course, these questions do not have answers, but the responses were generally positive. If you think of this way, because we questioned to the quantum tech experts, the answers tend to be generally positive. So you would have to take it by yourself and think about whether their opinions are legitimate or not. Given that quantum hardware is relatively new, only few investors are hoping for a short-term return on their investment. Generally, individual investors, right? So we expect organizations with relatively tolerable budgets to keep their investments alongside projects already in progress. So the big money from the organizations or hedge funds and other from big investments, they already know they cannot get return on a short-term basis. So they're talking about investing for a long term. So although there may be a let's wait and see attitude during this year, there will be a big money waiting for a longer term. And our next subtitle is It's Not Critical Yet. So the editor-in-chief of Quantum Computing Report, which is the media that published this report, said the quantum technology sector will be affected to some extent, but it's hard to see this bad news as critical. So VC, venture capital investors are becoming more cautious and may not be ready to invest in quantum computing as in the past. But they're saying it's not critical. So experts point out that some quantum companies that had planned to go public in spec, so going to public by using spec this year have delayed their plans. So for example, by my research, D-Wave was originally expecting to go on a spec on second quarter, but it hadn't completed its spec yet. And Quantinum, which is composed of Honeywell's QC business unit and with Cambridge Computing, they were expected to go spec this year, but I don't see their movement yet. So we could see economic downturn has obviously affected the quantum industry, but it is not critical yet. That's what this expert is saying. And the founder and director of the Institute for Quantum Strategies, he said that he drew the line between the ready and the unprepared. So what differentiates them? So companies that are currently well-funded will slow the impact of a recession, but those that lack the money and the skilled management, proximity to customer short-term cash flow, and the patience for long-term prospects will be challenged to survive a prolonged recession, even with a bright future for quantum investments today. So we have to see if we invest in quantum computing companies, whether they have enough money to tolerate this economic downturn. And the CEO of Interference Advisors said that we are entering a historical downturn, and he's sure that quantum technology will be relatively protected. But I don't think there will be any significant adjustments to the current macro situation. The driving force behind quantum technology is not the macroeconomic situation, but the tension between the maturity curve of the quantum computing technology itself and market forces rather than micro or macroeconomic trends. So we'd have to focus more on the technology maturity curve instead of the economic situation. And another measure that they're talking about, quantum technology is still in its infancy. As much science as engineering is required for users to derive real value from this paradigm-shifting technology. So we'll have to wait very long for the technology to actually make some value, make actual value. And while investor and stakeholder-led market forces in quantum technology are generating hype and anticipation, the reality is that it is too early for us to measure by the metric. The combination of these factors will make no one feel safe, including me. The cash is expensive, resources are scarce, capital is slowing, and projects will be scrutinized more intensively. So execution is the key. So what he's saying is that the next 2 years is very important because it's the opportunity for quantum technology to truly demonstrate its potential and a period for truly scalability. So in order for investors like us or the investment organizations to prolong their investment, they have to show something within the 2 years. So the execution is the key. Adoption immunity will only last a short time. Quantum technologies will make up a small fraction of modern IT budgets. Significant scalable commercialization is still a long way off. It hints at difficult times ahead. So these are some of the negative situations or negative opinions from the experts. So one of the other experts said that he has a real concerns about the quantum sector, not because of the economic situation. He said, I am worried that the quantum funding party will end soon. This is not because of a widespread recession. Hardware companies have made a huge investment and will have to go back for the next round of funding. So I guess this refers to IonQ because they have raised more than billions of dollars and they haven't shown a significant value from the investor's perspective. So if their fund is all used, they'll have to go back to the table to get additional funds. So it'll be difficult to raise more capital without achieving a clear milestone, which will worsen the overall quantum computing investment landscape, exacerbated by a broader market downturn. Qubit Ventures executive said that as the quantum technology sector is still in its infancy, the impact of the economic downturn will be minimal. But in general, the impact will be on large VCs investing in quantum computing companies that are already public who needs to show traction and a higher investment. So Quantum Futures Chairman Connor Teague said that as a professional recruiter in the quantum field, we are monitoring quantum hiring trends. If quantum investment slows, people will be fired. If the companies continue to achieve their goals, there will be no problem, but quantum companies have set up excessive roadmaps to procure funding. This applies to all the major QC companies like Rigetti, IBM, IonQ, Honeywell, and so on. I've already seen a lot of experts saying that their roadmap is too excessive. It's impossible, basically. So achieving those milestones is very difficult. So it puts a strain on the way the world views quantum computing companies if they fail. So if you can achieve it, they will instill the idea that you can't get quantum working. So he also added that the quantum VCs understand the need for long-term investments and may put in additional support to undergo this storm. So they already know this is a storm and they may need additional funds. From the point of view of an economic historian, we should all remember that all technologies were one-time new technology. Quantum computing is no exception. Interest always comes and goes. It was the same from telegram to personal computers. But the potential impact of quantum information science is different. So it's too broad, it's too big. So this brings risks as well as benefits to areas such as data security and national security as well. So interest in quantum science will not fade in the short term. The application of quantum information science will change the way we live and work, even if it takes 5, 10, or 20 years, and as a result, this will create lasting focus and investment current day. So we cannot just ignore the quantum computing, just like other technologies that have faded away, because its impact is too broad and too important, because it affects national security and our financial information and so on. So furthermore, I have had conversations with experts about why the quantum technology sector is different from other technologies or why it is not. One of the experts pointed out that given the performance and potential of quantum computers, there's a bit of a protective atmosphere around quantum computers compared to larger market cycles. And compared to other technologies, Sanders pointed out that quantum technology companies have less of an impact from supply chain issues because they have not entered mass production yet. So there is no mass production in quantum computing or quantum networking. These devices are usually assembled by doctors and the parts consumed is not high. So several experts were quick to point it out that global governments are not exceptions to government funding or for quantum startups. So we could see that the leading countries' governments are pouring money to the quantum startups and to quantum science. So quantum technology has received huge government funding and this funding will continue or increase. There are national security, economic, and health concerns from governments that make this funding possible. So European countries and China in particular are investing more than the US to prevent the US from dominating quantum technology as it did in classical computer technology. So this is one of the reasons why it is a great idea to invest in quantum computing. So national governments are eager to pour money in the quantum computing so they could be dominant in this area because any country that is far ahead in the quantum computing will dominate in the future, not just in the industry, but in the finance or pharmaceuticals, investing new battery for electrical vehicles and optimizing for airports and to logistics. So it impacts so many industries. So it'll be the backbone for the next generation technology. So do not forget that in key market regions such as North America, Europe, and parts of Asia, Israel, quantum technology ranks the highest in national priority. So these are the reasons why we should consider investing in quantum computing. So individual companies can suffer when they fail to reach milestones as we saw before or run out of the money. So due to the small current pool of quantum attraction and quantum personnel and the multiple hardware approaches, if you want to go far, go together can be applied here. So there will be many merger and acquisition in this industry in the future. So if you look at the waves of AI, quantum technology companies that cannot deliver commercial results will disappear. However, highlighting in the market's use cases can keep investors and consumers interested, just like IonQ is doing right now. And there will be a slow shift from a talent shortage gap to a balanced talent gap across sectors. So dominant players will take over the weak players and get more talents from the small companies. So experts predict that more mergers and acquisition within the quantum industry. The quantum technology market is moving towards consolidation and full stack, which means providing all service from software to hardware and algorithm and so on. So full stack providers will emerge as winners and capital will flow into projects that promise the best approaches to this unsolved puzzle of quantum industry. So companies like PsiQuantum or IonQ have already raised enough funds to last several years of the downturns. So companies that don't even have the money to last 1 year to 1.5 years will cut consumption, which rather than general layoffs will lead to slow employment and reduce investment, slowing progress, which will lead to their bankruptcy. But there's already a gradual changes going on. Change will happen gradually. In fact, the change has already begun. As we've seen in the stock price of IonQ and Rigetti and the acquisition of Quantinum, it will have a ripple effect on the industry in the future. But some powerful companies will survive and thrive. Netflix was founded in 97 and Google in 98. And years before the dot-com bubble burst in 2000, it survived and prospered. So only the strongest will survive. So just like that, the weak will disappear and the strong will become the major players and become stronger. So we're still in the early stage where scientific development or research is dominating. So while there will be a financial pressures on the supplier side and to startups, we do not anticipate failure due to external factors at the moment. So they're saying that there will be merger and acquisition. So the big players will eat up the small ones and the dominant players will continue to survive and thrive. So my opinion. So quantum technology will become a must despite the macroeconomic downturn. So there's already a huge investment by world governments from the leading countries due to the economic and national security impact caused by the huge potential of quantum technology. There will be several mergers and acquisitions within the quantum industry to survive, and companies with sufficient funds as of now, are at an advantage. So when the economic downturn is feared, a company with big cash will survive, such as IBM Quantinuum, which is a big company supporting the quantum division, and IonQ Quantum, which has already secured a lot of money from their spec or from funding rounds. So companies that are currently dominating are likely to continue to dominate in the future. So small talent pool, skill gap, higher barriers to entry. So this makes current dominant players to survive and thrive even more. The current roadmap of quantum computing is said to be somewhat excessive. So companies that do not reach the roadmap will be eliminated because of the loss of expectations, exhaustion of investment, and difficulty in obtaining investment in the future. So continuous monitoring of their roadmap achievement is required. So it is better for us to invest in companies that are currently dominant, well-funded, and well achieving the roadmap. So this should be our standard on whether we should invest in this QC company or not, even in the economic downturns. Okay, so we briefly talked about the investing at QC on recession. So our conclusion was to invest in QC company if you'd like to, that are currently dominant, well-funded, and well achieving the roadmap. So we also learned about the future of QC and which company will survive. So that's all for today, and I hope to see you guys in the next video as well. Thank you, everyone.